Mary Me, Brittany here. Know I'm a little late on this, but I wanted to do the 7 witchy tags video. So here we go. Number 1, the biggest disaster spell-wise. Several years ago, I was doing a binding spell, and because I was in an apartment and I wanted to be safe about it, I was doing my spell in a bowl in the bathtub, and I really was not giving any thought to how it was going to affect everything else, but it set the smoke detector off. So not only did that um, break into my spell time, but I had to basically stop what I was doing and take everything outside so that the smoke detector could calm down. And yeah, it was not good. So I'm sure that that's probably not a big issue for a lot of people. They do it outside anyway, or they turn the smoke detectors off, or whatever the case may be. But I was a witchling and wasn't thinking about it. All right, number 2. Something I wish someone had told me um, when I started into the craft. The only thing that I really knew about the craft was Wicca, and I did not realize that there were so many different paths, there were so many different labels, there were so many different um, variations of paganism under the whole umbrella. And I wish somebody had opened me up to that sooner instead of just the Wicca. I'm totally not saying that Wicca is bad, but 9 times out of 10, Wicca is the first term you hear when you enter paganism, and it in itself is a lot to learn and process, and you don't necessarily have the opportunity to be exposed to the other terms or paths or whatever. And in fact, earlier this year was the first time that I had actually heard the term Asatru, and I had no idea what that was. So, so even though I have been in the craft or under the umbrella of the craft for a while, I still consider myself as having a lot of learning to do. Number 3, biggest witchy pet peeves. I actually wrote down 2 of them. The first one is pagans and having a disdain for Abrahamic religions. Um, there are a lot of times that I will hear pagans cast a negative light onto Christians or other people in the Abrahamic umbrella in a negative light, and I myself am guilty of that. It took me a long time to get past all the things um, that I had been taught while I was going to church, and it took me a long time to become not angry at the church, and it took me a long time to get to where I could accept other faiths, specifically Abrahamic faiths. And those were all different phases. Everything I just said was a different phase. So I'm myself guilty of that, and I know that there are a lot of pagans that are raised Christian, and it's a long road to hoe when you go from Christianity to paganism, and there's a lot of emotion that comes with that, and a lot of baggage, and a lot of anger and resentment. But it does bother me a little bit that there are so many pagans who are so quick to judge people based on the fact that they're Christians. There are a lot of there are a lot of judgmental Christians out there, but there are a lot of awesome Christians out there too. And you get that with every group. There are, just in um, the apparent and obvious waspiness that I have, there are white people, and then there are rednecks. You see where I'm going with this. There's a division in every group, and um, it is difficult, and there are a lot of emotions that come with that, but it's also the long-winded point that I'm trying to make here is that if we as pagans treat some Christians the way that some Christians treat us, how are we expecting to get anywhere? So that was my main point with that. That was really long-winded. All right. The second one is real witches. Real witches. Just because I do something one way and you do something another way doesn't invalidate my way. It also doesn't invalidate your way. It irritates me when people say, okay, well, you don't do it the way that I do it, so you must not be a real witch. Well, no, that's just pure ridiculousness, and it needs to stop. All right, number 4. Now, moving on. Yeah. Number 4, when did I know I was a witch? Unconsciously, I've always been a witch. When I was younger, I saw a lot of spirits. I had an invisible friend that I talked to all the time. I was very accepting of a lot of things that I know as adults we kind of shut ourselves off to. So on an unconscious level, I've always been pagan. Consciously, I was about 14 years old before I really opened myself up to the possibility of being a pagan. I was still going to church at the time, mostly because my mother was pushing it on me, but I was not happy in the church. There was a lot of things that were going on in the church that wasn't very Christian at all, and I really did not feel comfortable with a lot of it, and I didn't feel comfortable with a lot of the teachings. So I slowly broke off, and I actually, probably the best and surprisingly ballsy thing that I did when I was a teenager, I had a eye doctor's appointment one day, and I asked my mom to step out of the room so that I could talk to the doctor. And when she stepped out of the room, I took that opportunity to ask him a non-medical question about religion and how do I decide if I'm Christian or not. And he told me that if he told me that everybody goes through this stage of their life at one point or another, and if I really had doubts, then what I needed to do was do as much research on as many religions as I could get my hands on, and find out what worked best for me. And so paganism was, just the natural fit. It felt like coming home, and that's what a religion should feel like. It should feel like coming home. And I would say to anybody who is struggling with their religion, especially if you're younger and you might be still underneath the influence of family who don't necessarily have the are not necessarily evolved enough to accept that you might want something different. I would say talk to somebody that is outside of your family that you trust, that is not necessarily in the realm of religion, but somebody that you can trust that they're going to give you a straight answer, and do your research. Just open a book. And if that means um, skipping a skipping a biology class where you have to dissect a frog and you don't believe that that is right, to hide in the library for 50 minutes like I did, then that's what you need to do. Which question was I on? Oh yes, number 5. Okay. What is the best witchy book you've read? I love Phyllis Curate, or Curo, however you pronounce her last name. Her Book of Shadows was the first, one of the first books that I read, and it made me feel very, very comfortable in what I was embarking on. And in fact, I don't want to say crutch, but I kind of use it as a support beam, or a jumping off point. Whenever I get stagnant in my craft, I always kind of turn to that book, and it helps me a lot. Usually by the time I get to the middle of the book, I'm like, okay, I'm back in the game. So that's usually how I go. As far as books that are not necessarily written by a witchy author, but have witchy undertones or whatever, I like Anne Rice a lot. I am a fangirl of Anne Rice, and I like Deborah Harkness as well. I feel that, she brings a lot of academia to the subject, and she knows how to keep you turning pages. So that's really cool. All right, number 6, the best witchy TV show or movie. My standard answer, because I'm a witch, and probably every witchy tag video, the person's going to say this. So my standard answer is practical magic, because I've noticed watching everybody else that it's either one of two things. It's either practical magic or the craft. Well, mine is practical magic. I probably go against the grain a little bit, because for the most part, I really don't like the craft. I watch it sometimes, but it's really not my favorite. I don't know why. I really couldn't tell you, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way, I guess. My non-standard answers, there is a Hallmark movie called Good Witch that I think is really cute. It's cute and just fairy dust everywhere, basically. It's not really serious, but I like it. It's cute. And I also, let's see, the TV shows. I like Vampire Diaries, which is insane for me on a practical adult level, because I don't like soap operas, and this is basically a supernatural soap opera. But it is, I don't know, it just draws you in. I love vampires. What can I say? I also like the originals, because it's like Vampire Diaries, the adult version. So, and my best friend turned me on to the cutest cartoon in the world called Ruby Gloom. And it's probably more gothic than it is witchy, but it's so freaking cute. All right, last one. Have you ever doubted your path? Yes, lots of times. I have, lots of times. There have been times when I have um, written long-winded journal entries about how I'm stuck and I don't think that this is the right path for me, um, and I don't know where I'm going or what I'm supposed to do or what the goddess needs me to do or wants me to do, or um, I've written poems to the goddess hoping that would um, jog stuff, and I've written letters to the goddess, and I've done lots of things. But like I said earlier, I found that Phyllis Curate, every time I have a little bit of self doubt, I go back to her book, and usually by the middle of it, I'm like, okay, I'm good. We're good here. um, everybody, excuse me, everybody doubts their faith, and that's not just paganism. That's Christianity and everything else. Everybody doubts their path at one point in time. And there was a video that I watched probably last week. I can't remember the YouTube name, but his view on it was that that's how you know that it's the path for you, is that if you doubt it and then you're able to come back to it, and that if it's healthy to have your faith shaken every once and again, because it leads to new growth. It really, really does. And if you aren't in a position where you can honestly tell yourself that you have doubted your path, then you need to stop and do some soul searching and reevaluate. And you might not necessarily be on the wrong path, but you are not being honest with yourself, and you're not being right by yourself, and you need to fix that. So, those are my answers to the 7 Witchy Questions tag. I cannot believe that I made this video so long. I apologize. So I try to make the video shorter so that you don't have to sit and watch me for a half hour just ramble on about ridiculousness. But anyway, merry parts.